go. Good
I'm
morning,
always grooving to
Dan.
that tune. That's a
Oh
good
man.
tune, brother. Good tune.
Oh, I had to. I had to pick the reggae. You know what? I was making it the day after we had Maria for Fun Day Fridays, and she was like, the Cuban fire and all that stuff. So I was like, you know what? We're not gonna put some country. We're not gonna put some hip hop. We're gonna get that reggae tone going. So it's
Mm.
I love it. I think it's amazing. Shout out to everybody kind of giving us feedback. But this is Dan Sales Chatter, the logistics podcast where we aim to help 10,000 reps hit a million GP. I'm your co-host Ryan Mohamed, aka the Logistics Monk. With me is my good friend Dan O'Mac. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, brother? Hey, good day today, man. Good day, brother. Just got discharged from the pain clinic today, so we're rocking and rolling. That's one more step towards being untethered and ready to go like the Mustang. Had some. I mean, we'll be talking about it in the next probably 2 weeks, but had some amazing things happen this morning with digitally that we're gonna. Yeah. It's coming for y'all. So that was super exciting to actually watch that work in the background. You like, and we're going to talk about it today, but you have these dreams and you're always striving for them. And you have these little speed bumps that come up and obstacles and we overcome it. And then all of a sudden you get to see that dream actually work or appear. And it's just a crazy feeling, and no matter how many times it happens, it's like you can accomplish. It's like every time it happens, it's this new energy and this newfound kind of vibration. So that's coming in the next couple of weeks. That's going to be super cool. Can't wait. Yeah, but other than that, brother, rock and roll. What about you?
Rock and roll. Well, let's get to it, my man.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
I love everything you just said, Dan, because I was listening to a podcast at the gym a couple days ago, and I forget who it was, but they were kind of saying, how willing are you to go in and put in the work day after day after day without seeing results? And they're kind of talking more of a gym focus. You kind of go, you lift weights, you do all that stuff, but it's a progression over time. So congratulations. We'll keep that under wraps, but I'm really looking forward to that. And you're getting there. We're all getting there. But today is I always love when I get to interview people that I consider friends and family. Dan, I'm not just a little bit biased here because everybody who comes on to the show, they are friends and family of ours, right? But today, it's somebody that I get to collaborate with, whether it be a weekly or a daily basis. So today, Dan, we're in for a treat because we have Mark, who is the branch manager of the Calgary location at TPZ Logistics, which is a Wellington group of companies subdivision as well. As people who know as well, I actually work for the Toronto branch. So it's pretty cool to know people a little bit in depthly. I know, Dan, when you have conversations with people that you've worked with before, conversations about sales chatter or different things that they're kind of going on in their progression of life. It's just all love to kind of see people come together. So, Dan, what are your thoughts before?
It's amazing to actually see the progression of everybody, and in the end it's all very similar, but it might be just different feeds that people are getting it from, but it's so similar. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, well, let's bring him on. Let's bring him all the way from Calgary this morning. We want to welcome Mark onto Sales Chatter. Good morning, brother.
Morning. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. Got a radio voice there, eh?
Well, I actually on my off time, one of my biggest pleasures is music. And I've been playing guitar for over 20 years. And I actually used to run a hard rock metal podcast called Raise Your Horns Radio. And it did actually really good. Ended up going to Conestoga College. I called it Coconut Clown College, and I did business administration, accounting. My heart was radio, television arts, but as you can see, my Serbian last name that my father cursed me with, he said, "No, you must go to school for business. That's it." So that's. But then when I got out of there, I knew I was going to be in sales. So that was what brought me to obviously being now on this podcast. Is just chasing sales my whole life.
Chasing sales your whole life. I love that. I mean, we need to get that like on a shirt or something like that. I think that's just so important to think about. And first, I want to shout out to you, Marco, because like you've been such a big supporter of our show. Like you're always kind of seeing the comments, always supporting us, and that's the one thing. As you and I, we work together alongside, but then at the end of the day, we kind of like support each other from there. So tell us a little bit about TPZ Logistics. Who are you guys? What do you guys do? How did you end up having a branch in Calgary? Let's hear a little bit about your origin story before we get into today's topic.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's been one heck of a wild ride being with the Wellington Group of companies. I must say it is hands down the best trucking company I've ever worked for in my entire life. Like I was telling you before this podcast started, you see people that are smiling and happy all the time, and you ask yourself, like, what am I missing in life? Like, well, what do I have to do to be that person that wakes up every day motivated? And I'm there. So I feel like I'm finally, that hashtag winning slogan that goes around. So every day for me is great. Honestly, my wife too, she's just like, in all the years you've been in logistics, she's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's a side hustle you're doing, but you wake up happy every single day. There's been no more like animosity in the house. Your drinking's gone down like 50%. Like what's the deal here? And it's because of the company, right? TPZ Logistics is a 3PL backed by assets, trucking pros out of Roberts, Wisconsin, headed by the owner, Jason Nesbitt, who's an absolute pleasure to work with. Super fantastic guy. Wild story. I had a headhunter reach out to me and said, there's an opportunity if you're interested in it. Talk to Jason. He gave me his spiel, and he hopped on a plane, flew down to Calgary, met me at Shark Club. We had a few beers, and he hired me on the spot. I know that sounds crazy, but he put a lot of trust in me, and he threw me the keys to open an office in Calgary to grow Western Canada. And I've never looked back. It's just been month after month of grind, hustle, grow, promote, and we're finally now starting to make a lot of strides in the West, flatbed business, and we're also really growing our final mile parcel services. So offering a lot of final mile, hyper local Amazon type of shipping. So I always knew that was definitely the area to get to, because traditional freight that's boxed that you're moving from point A to point B is very saturated. And when COVID hit, all the retailers realized that we've got to get product right to the end consumer's door.
Yeah.
So a lot of bad happened with COVID, but some good things came out of it, kind of making the wheel look at it a little differently. And one of those was the final mile. Now we also offer customs. Each branch is a little bit different. I think they saw that having branches regionally is going to tailor to different regions. Toronto branch is obviously going to tailor to more of the East Coast stuff. And then on the West, there's a whole different vibe. But
and there's a huge different vibe on the West Coast and the East Coast for sure. I think COVID ushered in a lot of things that were coming faster, because the Amazon experience, or whatever you want to call it, it was coming. I think COVID made it happen faster. People realized really quickly they couldn't count on their normal distribution channels of having, a distribution center in California and service all of North America. They had to have these mini kind of service channels to get the product to customers faster. I remember when this online purchasing, Dell Computer was one of the first ones that sold only online, and they've never had a store. They've always only sold online. And they pinned it down to literally, Mark, like 2-hour time frame from the time they would get refunds. And it was really cool to see UPS supply chain and how they operated it, because it would, from the time it got ordered to the time it delivered, was in the neighborhood of 62 hours, 61 hours. And at 63, they would get a refund. And this is way before Amazon or anything. And when we would put our credit card in an online form, it was like your heart sputtered until that thing arrived at the door, right? So I love that fact that the regional and just being able to service customers in their in their hometown and being able to do it at lightning speed. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it totally is. And the other thing is too, is I'm sure you're aware, you get into a whole other area of freight where your drivers are now meeting these customers daily. There's a whole different flair that comes with that. It's not as simple as, okay, here's your PO, your bill of lading, drop it off at the shipper. Most of the times the drivers don't even really see people unloading the freight, kind of drop, hook, and then off they go, right? And what we did a little bit different in the industry is we now also offer dunnage removal. And my thinking is, if you have somebody who's already getting, say, an 80-inch TV delivered to their house, they're going to, want to put it on their wall or whatever. Who wants to deal with all that styrofoam and garbage? I don't want to deal with that myself. So I thought, why don't we offer this service to shippers? And yeah, it just taken off. So we had to actually work with Peter Kuza out in Wellington to help build us a portal through TransPlus. And it was a very difficult process because we had to get the customer's IT to stamp off on it for any certain potential vulnerabilities, or what happens if somebody tries to penetrate the server kind of stuff. But now that that's all done, that each of the stores now have their own proprietary assigned IP address so that they can go in, and each store needed 3 logins. So you needed one for online orders, you need one for pharmaceutical, and you need one for in-store orders. So customer goes in, decides to buy something, realize they can't fit it in their car, then they have to ship it out, right? So it's a bit of a nightmare at first, but once you wrap your head around it, then it's actually quite simple to execute it.
I think that's along the lines of, you're creating new opportunity in an old market. The typical pick up and deliver, and I am a logistics broker. I want freight from US to Canada, Canada to US. You're expanding that and opening those markets to give you more opportunity in order to service a customer at a higher level, right? Well, like we were talking about leading from the front this whole session, and that's how you do it. You come up with these new opportunities to allow your team and yourself and your office and in general your overall company to offer a service that other people aren't thinking about, either are not thinking about, or look at it and go, I'd love to do that, but man, that's a lot of work. And I don't know if I'm up for it. I mean, I'd love it for it to happen, but it's a difficult thing to get going, because if you don't have assets, you have to count on your partners to be doing the dunnage removal, and then they have to count on the drivers to do dunnage removal. And drivers these days, not the same drivers they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, or you get in a truck with your ops manager and you do it yourself. Wink, wink. But I'll tell you what I love the most about trucking and sales is it's not like a video game that you pick it up, you beat it. No, it's never going to end. And with trucking, for me, it's once the shipper is sorted out and the freight runs like a well-oiled machine, I'm bored. Most people say, what are you complaining about? Like, no, I'm bored. I like the grind and I like the hustle, looking from the outside, in. That's where I find that you actually find solutions for customers. And one of the things that just drives me up the wall, and I'm hearing a lot of this, is when we talk to shippers, before we even move their freight, I want to get to know them. I said, would you want me to throw you something? And I said, no, I don't want you to use me as a punching bag, like with your incumbents. I want to know, like, what are you struggling with? You can't just say you're happy with your freight. Everyone says they're happy. No, you're not happy. That's just a moment of time until you need more happiness. So you're not happy. What is it that you're actually struggling with? And then once you start to have SOP meetings with them, you actually find out that most of the time they don't even have the right people booking their freight. So I'm noticing that a new niche that we're getting into now is turnkey solutions, where we actually will go and visit them and tell them what they're actually lacking, what they need in the industry. And then we find out that they've been, with customs brokerages that are causing them huge accessorials at the border because they're not clearing their freight in time. They would have never known that if I was just quoting their freight from point A to point B. The typical broker thinks, oh, that's stuck at the border, not my fault. Good, I'm going to reap it in. That's just, that's not how we are. in this, and because we're like that, we've been noticing a huge amount of referrals. And as you know, in this industry, referrals are huge. If you can get referrals, just like the slogan says, trusted solutions, I stand by that. If they trust us, then they're more willing to work with us. So it's definitely been a little bit of a grind growing the business out west, but now the word of mouth's got out there. Rachel McMunn, who's in charge of our marketing out in Wellington, she's finally started really pushing the TPZ slogan, and the phone was ringing multiple times yesterday. Hey, I saw you guys in the internet. Hey, I saw there was a post on Facebook. I love that, because trucking, as you guys know, is such a dinosaur industry. It's so old, and I feel like now it's our generation. Whether the old timers want to accept it or not, we're coming up forward pretty fast. So it's up to us to now kind of shape it, and it's more digital than it's ever been. And that'd be an interesting topic to quickly poke your guys' brain on, is how do you see trucking changing over the next 10 to 20 years? With, we have EDI that's kind of shaped the last 15 years. Now we have e-log mandates that are really, really, big. So yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think that the trucking is going to look like in the next 10 to 20 years?
Yeah. Well, before I get into that, I actually want to touch on a couple of things that you said, Mark, because I definitely do want to acknowledge it. So, the first and foremost thing that you said, when you don't look at trucking or sales like a video game, you pick it up, you beat it, and then you put it away in your closet or whatever. And I saw something that was very similar to that. The point of life is things that cannot be won. Like when somebody gets married, you didn't win. The point of marriage is to keep that going. You don't win at health. The point of it is to keep staying healthy and continue that progress. Same thing with business, right? You don't ever, I know, like from the top at our company, that the bosses, they're not just happy with, okay, we've got to this revenue record, we're done. It's always kind of moving that goalpost forward, that Dan mentioned last week as well. And I love the discussion that you're having, Mark, because Dan, this is very similar to what we talked about yesterday. In terms of being more than a freight broker, being somebody who, whether it's your social profiles, you're able to have those conversations with people like, hey, I don't want to just do your pickup and drops. Hey, I can find solutions. And the turnkey solutions, I think you get so ingrained because Dan, you're obviously a veteran in the industry. You've done this for numerous customers. There's one that you and I kind of visited, which is like, okay, well, let's figure out the inefficiency. So I think that's really cool to talk about. So I want to acknowledge that, Mark, because I like to kind of listen and to pay attention. So to answer your question about 10 to 20 years, for me, okay, so here's my first thought about that, brother. I'm not going to be in the industry for 10 to 20 more years. So I want to be, it's like when Magic Johnson, when they asked him about being GM for the Lakers, when he was leaving, they asked him a question about the next season. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen that clip, but definitely take a look. Magic Johnson, LA Lakers. He literally says, I'm not going to be here for that. So for me personally, I'm not going to be here to see that, but I do see it's just going to be more strategic in terms of you're going to see the really solid people and solid solutions like you are, where they're actually a part of a company. It's an arm of a company. It's just not, hey, let's send out some tenders to a logistics company and they'll book it for it. It's like, no, this company, whether it be TPZ Logistics or any other company, they run our whole logistics. So everything kind of free flows through them. We look at AI, we look at automation and different things like that. So it's going to get more advanced, I would say. And I like it. I'm a technical guy anyway. So I would love to see that. I'm kind of tired of getting tenders by email, like typing like tenders, like to and from and like weights and all that stuff. So I'd love to kind of see that. Dan, I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
Well, I think it's going to be literally all digital, whether it be on blockchain or whatever it is, whatever the new circumstances there, like you just look at EDI, for example. Somebody can hit enter in their computer and it can send an entire tender to your computer, build the load sheet, do everything. All you got to do is assign a truck to it. And I think that's going to be done automatically in the future. Will I be in this industry in 20 years? No. But I think I'll probably follow it for the rest of my life because it's been ingrained in me for the last 30. And it's one of those things that no matter how hard you try and put it down, it always calls you back. So just, understanding the markets, understanding what's happening. I mean, customers, I believe you, Ryan, when you say, it's going to be logistics companies, which are the actual traffic divisions of companies. This is something that started decades ago where, the big 3Ls would put employees in your office and all this kind of stuff. And it works because now they don't have to manage those employees. Now, Like it's that whole back and forth with, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, customer routed versus, there's pros and cons to customer routed for some traffic managers, because they don't have to worry about when stuff's late. It's the customer's fault. So, hey, something goes wrong and it's late, you can't yell at me. It's your truck that you chose to bring in. So there's going to be the pros and cons. I think in the end, it'll all be on something like a blockchain, where you'll be able to trace everything back through digitally trace everything back through everything. And I'm talking carrier assignment, literally the miles that he ran, the tolls that he paid, like everything. I think it's all going to be digitized.
I like that a lot. I think those are very things. Mark, you mentioned that before everything, that you're big into music, playing guitar. I think I follow your YouTube channel, things like that. And it's always cool for me to talk to another musician, whether it's on this show or like other shows and things like that, because the stuff that I've learned with the practice, I've been playing music, I want to say about 17, 18 years now. And that has actually been an easy transition for me, and not my dog Jackson, into logistics and sales specifically. What advice or what lessons have you learned, whether it be being a performer yourself for your team or yourself, in terms of being a musician and sales in general?
You gotta like that, Mark. He had a dog barking, and he made it through that whole question with barely even flinching. That was good, brother.
Yeah, well, I've got 5 children, so imagine doing that in surround sound, because it's a daily thing. So,
first of all, you have 5 children. Were you dropped as a kid on your head or something? What's up with that?
No,
that's a lot of kids.
I think there's something to be said about the woman that you marry will kind of. I remember long time ago, a little kid, Italian grandparents, and I remember my Italian grandfather saying to me, "It's really not going to be up to you how many kids you're going to have. It's going to be up to you. It's whoever you marry will determine how many children you will or you will not have." But that being said, you were mentioning music, Ryan. I don't know. I think it comes down to certain traits of people. Like the older I get, I realize you can kind of you can set into 5 or 7 fixed personalities, any nationality, any gender, any person. There's about 7 of them. And I think I'm just one of the 7 that's either there's a few screws loose in my brain because I tell myself that I'm happy in trucking. But, with me, it's always been more is more. I've never, ever, ever lived by the mantra that how can less be more? More is more. So for music, everybody's saying to me, slow down, less notes. No, screw that. If you can't ride this train, I'm going to leave you in the dust. And that's the way it's always been with me my whole life. I never got along with teachers because I didn't think you needed school to succeed. To me, it was just nonsense. So with trucking, I always pushed. So when I started in this, we talked briefly, I was at Rome Transport, complete boiler room mentality in the Tri-Cities. Then I thought, you know what? I'm seeing all these entry lines, ACE manifests coming in. I don't know nothing about this. So let's go work at a customs brokerage. Okay, let's figure that out. So then I did entry lines day in and day out. But guess what? You learn that there's a specific code for instance, for a pen, if it has a blue tip and it's a BIC, that's one entry line number. The same pen with a black tip, that's a totally different number. So you start to understand why things get stopped at the border. They don't put the right paperwork together. Then I thought, okay, this is really good, but I can't visualize freight, how it gets loaded. How does this look? So then I went to work for Rob Cooper, which was one hell of an experience at Cooper Brothers Trucking in Hamilton. Worked my way up to a southbound division manager, managing multiple trucks going into Akron, Ohio. And people think they know stress and brokerage. Go work for an asset-based terminal, and then they'll really understand what truckers, and terminal managers go through. And then after that, I discovered Western Canada, knew nothing about the market, fell in love with it, and thought, hey, let's just roll the dice. I just got married. We just had a child, and my wife's like, are you insane? Like, we're going to leave our entire life behind. I'm like, no, we're starting fresh. We're going to go live a new life. And to this day, I say that move that I made to Western Canada has set me probably 20 years ahead of my career by moving out west. Such a beautiful province. absolute joy to work with shippers out here. And the biggest passion that I get is connecting East and West shippers that it might sound ridiculous, but they really don't know how either side operates, you know. And without getting into it, because it's a very soft spot, and keep in mind, I'm a hybrid because I was born in Moulton, Ontario, home of the Avro Arrow, and I grew up in Cambridge. So I move out here, so I'm a hybrid. But what goes on is a lot of political environment, the East and West. It's not just in the NHL. Politically, they don't get along. And you realize that when you move out here. Something as ridiculous as, you know, folks will tell you, shippers out east, they call. I had a guy the other day, a new customer. He says, Mark, you're like the 20th person I've called that's finally answered the phone. And I said, no offense. It could be because you've got a 905 area code. I know that sounds ridiculous, but my biggest goal is I want to bridge the gap between the East and the West and grow our brand of TPZ as trusted solutions that anybody can trust, all walks of life. That's my goal to do here. And I feel like we're finally going in that direction.
I love that. I just wanted to, like, you know, when you talk about goals and missions, like Dan and I have a mission here, you know, for this specific show and everything we kind of do together, you know, to have 10,000 reps hit a million GP. And that's our goal. That's why every conversation that we have is to get it closer to that goal. And the same thing with you, to try to make that East and West and kind of be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I think that is so amazing to kind of see. I know Dan would definitely agree with that as well. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the conversation today is about like leading from the front. So, you know, Jason came to meet you. He basically gave you the keys and was like, okay, well, now this is my own thing. You know, I got to run this. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is, maybe they're a top performer, you know, they're definitely a top performer at where they're at. They want to become a manager. They want to go into that managerial experience because, you know, what I see in the industry, and I know Dan could agree with this, Mark, is that a lot of top performers get moved into those managerial roles, but there's no training, there's no nothing, and they kind of got to figure it out on themselves. And most times it doesn't really work because they're still thinking as a top performer from Sarah. So what advice did you have or lessons that you've kind of learned opening your branch as you're growing, expanding your team and learning about them as well?
Well, I can tell you firsthand, a lot of the success that we've had is to not be afraid of failure. It's okay. I mean, I tell my staff all the time, mistakes have to happen. Don't worry about it. If you missed a load, if there was a problem with the shipper, it's okay. And you'd be amazed how much success you get when your, you know, employees actually hear you say, wow, he actually has my back. Like, I give them enough rope to hang themselves. It's really that simple. Sales obviously moves into management because if you understand growth and you understand GP and revenue, well, that's management 101. But you have to lead by example. So if I tell my sales guy, okay, we're going through a bit of a drought, guess what? I'm hammering the phones equally, if not harder than they are. You know, if ops is struggling and you see that it's 4:00 on a Friday, well, guess what? I'm going to hop on the load boards and I'm going to help move that freight. I can tell you how many managers that I've worked for that love the title and they don't do shit. And that's not respect. You got to actually work on the forefront and prove that you're part of the team. And it's actually funny every time somebody comes in and says, hey, boss, I tell them, no, I'm here to work with you. You don't work for me. We work together because we're a family, you know? That's really what I would attribute to maybe what is a lack of leadership. I think it's a lot of selfish, wrong, like, you know, Ray, who's the branch manager of Toronto, he's become such a good friend of mine, such a good friend. If anybody wants to chat to somebody who really knows the GTA market, you should reach out to him. He's a TPC branch manager, but he's told me too, it's just selfish reasonings. You get put into a chair just because you want the title and not realizing that, you know, like when Jason came to me and said, here's the keys to an office. I already knew what that meant. He's actually giving me the ability to run a business within a business. That's like unheard of. That's like, you're going to give me the keys to Ferrari and I just don't have to crash it. I'm going to ride that Ferrari all day long, you know? But anyway, that's my 2 cents on it, at least. Oh, and sorry. And admitting when you're wrong. It's okay for a manager to admit when he's wrong too. I've admitted that I'm wrong many times. That's the other one, is you have to be humble. If that's what a hero is, right? A hero is somebody who can be humbled. They're not always going to be Superman. There's times where they're, they got to be humbled. So
Preach to the choir here. Dan, what are your thoughts on what Mark just said?
Love it. Love it. I think I'd hate to say, but probably 90+% of managers get hired above their ability. And if they don't change, or they don't study, they don't grow, they don't learn more, like some of the things you were talking about, Mark, that's where our crap managers come from. The ones that, and I'm sure we've all worked for them, the ones that know a third of what you know and have no idea how to deal with people, because that's all it is. It's dealing with people. And it's now, as opposed to a salesperson, when you were a salesperson, you had to deal with your customers. Now you got to deal with your customers and all the other personalities in the office. And you got to make everything so seamless and intertwined that it builds the morale. And it's truly it's a challenge. It is a challenge. And I'm sure running that office, that sometimes it's a challenge. You're going to hire somebody that's kind of, like, you think they're one thing, and then all of a sudden you realize they could be an actual virus in the company, and you got to handle it quickly. Whereas most managers kind of turn their heads and almost, I'm going to say, pretend it's not happening, but I think it's more of they don't have the means or the skill to deal with it, if that makes sense. Because they were great as a salesperson, but they didn't have to manage people's emotions. They didn't have to manage, like if a salesperson loses a customer and they're in a slump and head office is coming down, we need more numbers. And it's like, you're that buffer between them. And it's helping that person who just might be in a slump, who's really way better than they think they are, and helping them become the best they can be. And I love that. I love that you lead from the front. Your team watching you jump into these situations is everything. Because most managers, like you said, once they get the seat, it's like, I'm gone at 4:00. I'm gone golfing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And it's just, I've seen it all. And I love the way you approach it, Mark.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that I always tell people too is to hire people smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not at all insecure to say that. I mean, everybody that's in this office could arguably, I could say they're all smarter than I am. That's how you, that's a very entrepreneurial thing that I found with a lot of entrepreneurs is, I'm like, what makes the Warren Buffetts of the world? They talk about reading and maybe they work with people to get information on how to invest, but they always talk with people smarter than them.
Yeah.
So, and again, I can tell you how many companies I've worked for where you try to tell a manager, well, I get this is how it's always been done, but that's the worst thing you can say is it's always been done. You're already going extinct now, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I tell everybody, sales or ops, listen, here's how I would do it. But if you give me a better answer, yeah, okay, let's roll with it. And if it fails, at least we know not to go that route again. But it's amazing. I can tell you, just even with sales, if you tell a sales rep, you know what? Because, for instance, I had a junior sales rep, Alan, who's absolutely like killing it. He's never done freight before. He's got a great sales background. Another killer musician. Should share his YouTube stuff with you. But he's killing it. And I've told him from the start, he says, do I make phone calls? Do I email? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to tell you, because every shipper is different. You may have to email, you may have to call, you may have to bang on their door, throw everything at the wall. And then you'll know pretty quick who's going to gravitate to what.
Yep.
And when you don't have fear as a salesperson and you don't have that hovering foot, you're going to naturally sell better, because now you're not, somebody's watching me, I can't do this, can't do that. Nobody likes to work like that.
Yeah, nobody. I think that's a big part of like the Wellington Group of companies, their mission too, because I'm almost hitting 4 years there. And when I started, it was the same thing. There was no, hey Ryan, there was no micromanaging. It was like, Ryan, like, you were hired for a reason, so you know what to do. What's going to work for you. And I love hearing stories about, because Dan has his story. We all have our story of when we didn't know freight and we got into it. And I've seen so many people with, just didn't get into freight on their own, and they're like, okay, well, we're killing it because they're fearless. they have nothing to lose, as opposed to, maybe this guy's on lunch right now. Maybe I won't call him between 12 and 1, all that stuff. And then you got somebody who's eager, like, yeah, I'll call him. And then they've kind of booked a brand new customer. So it's eager to do that as we're kind of wrapping up today. So, Mark, we can't thank you enough. I'd love for you to tell everybody about how they can get a hold of you, a little bit about TPZ, and as well, your message to the world today, my friend.
Yeah, sure. Well, anyone who follows me on LinkedIn will know that I'm very active socially. I think that the days of old-fashioned business cards are behind us. It's more of a face-to-face world. So you can follow me on LinkedIn if you're into music. My performer name is Axe Slinger. You can follow me there on YouTube. And we now have our own TPZ branded website. If you go on TPZ Logistics, just Google it up. You'll see that our branch has their own dedicated page. You'll see the beautiful photo that Rachel threw up on there of the whole office. You'll they say a picture says, 1,000 words, and in my mind, it says one word. It's family, and I think that's what's really going to separate us from the competition. Is you call us, and it's not, okay, well, what's your pickup number? Please hold. It's, hey, Joe, or hey, Brad, or, hey, Sarah. We actually know who these people are, and that really does go a very long way. Trust me, it really does. And honestly, my message for the world is, I don't want to sound corny, but follow your heart. I assure you, if you follow your heart and don't do things for the wrong reasons, like going through life, it'd be, maybe I'm going to do this because, I'll prove my parents wrong, or what, there was that ex of mine that really broke my heart. I'll prove them wrong. Or no, prove to yourself. Once you realize that you're competing with yourself, you'll always win because it'll never be enough. So that's my message to the world.
You versus you. Love that. Dano, top 3 takeaways and take us home, my friend.
I'm going in between barks here. Yeah, both of us dogs. I'm going nuts today for some reason. Top 3 takeaways. I love it. I love, first and foremost, that lead from the front. If you're a manager, heard it again. If you're a manager, make sure that you're willing to get your hands dirtier than everyone else, and then everyone else will follow you for sure. Mark, love the fact that family focused, family orientated. We ran our business like that for ages. It's the only way to do it. When customers feel appreciated, customers stay with you. And finally, love your message to the world. I love it. I often say, what you do screams so loud, I can't hear a word you say. And it's true. And that's what leading from the front is all about. To take us home, saleschatterlive.com. You can watch Lisa. Yes, you are correct. We do not have a way to communicate, meaning type chat, on the live page. I'm actually working on putting a Facebook thing in there. They don't unfortunately have anything else for like LinkedIn on an API side. So it would only be from Facebook that you can comment on the website, but you can watch these shows and the replays on our website at saleschatterlive.com. We are streaming from the Sales Chatter webpage on LinkedIn. And y'all just go out there and have yourself a great day.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you guys tomorrow.